What's up, y'all? It's Celeste. I'm finally making a video that isn't just a random health update of mine, although I do have another one of those coming up soon. But this video is kind of a sequel to a video I made last year called How to Use They Them Pronouns. And if you haven't seen that video, you can click up there to watch it and then come back to this video. But this one is kind of a response of sorts because I've gotten a lot of comments on that video, most of which have been positive. I've gotten some negative comments, of course, but I would say the majority of the comments that I get are positive comments, and messages also I've gotten of people, first of all, saying that they liked the video or that it was helpful to them, which is great because that's obviously why I made it. So I'm really happy that it went over as well as it did. But I've also gotten some questions and kind of people wanting clarifications and people being confused about some things still even after watching the video. So I wanted to make this one because it's kind of a frequently asked questions about how to use they them pronouns. So I'm gonna go through some of the questions that I get pretty frequently about how to use singular they, and then maybe talk about like one or two other things. But yeah, so that's what this video is going to be. And again, if you haven't watched the other video, you might want to watch that one first because it does go through kind of like a general advice on how to use they them pronouns in a sentence and how to kind of retrain your mind to use they them pronouns for somebody and just kind of like how to practice and that kind of stuff. So go and watch that, and then if you still have any questions, you can come back and watch this one. The first question I get all the time is, when you're talking directly to somebody who uses they them pronouns, would you still call them you? And some people have been confused about this, thinking maybe if you're talking to somebody who uses they them pronouns and you ask them like if they wanted to go to the movies with you, would you like directly to them say, would they like to go to the movies? But no, you don't have to do that. You can still say, would you like to go to the movies with me? It works exactly the same as any other third-person pronouns like he, him, or she, her. So exactly the same. Another thing I get asked about a lot is how to use verbs with they, them pronouns. So for example, would you say, do you know my friend Max? They is coming to the party. Or would you say, they are coming to the party? And they, them pronouns, even in the singular, follow subject-verb agreement. So you would still say they are coming to the party. You don't say they is, even though it's one person. And I know a lot of people get tripped up on this because when we say he is coming to the party, she is coming to the party, because those are singular, you think of that as that goes with the word is, but that's not always true. For example, if I were talking to you, I would say, are you coming to the party? I wouldn't say, is you coming to the party, even though you're one person. And if I were talking about myself, I would say, I am coming to the party. I wouldn't say, I is coming to the party. So even with singular pronouns, it doesn't have to be is. It depends on the specific pronoun you're using. And that's one of the really fun, confusing things about English and also a lot of other languages, but that's just how it works, and it's not anything unusual about they, them. It's just, they're all different. So just like you would say they are coming to the party if you were talking about 5 people, you would say they are coming to the party if you're talking about 1 person. I just want to note that everything I'm talking about regarding grammar in this video applies to standard English. If you use a dialect where you normally would say we is, or you is, or something like that, then of course you can go ahead and say they is. You want it to, like I said, follow subject-verb agreement. So if the dialect you're using does subject-verb agreement in that way, then you would still use they in the same way. Frequently asked question number 3, and this is again an example that I'm making up, is, would you say, isn't Max's vest cool? They made it themselves. Or would you say, they made it themselves? So this is actually one that doesn't really have a hard and fast rule. I've seen people use both of these, but I personally prefer themselves, and the reason for that is because I like to compare it to you. As I did in the last video, I think that they, them in the singular has a lot in common with the word you, because you can also be used in both singular and plural. And so if I were talking to one person, I would say, that's a cool vest. Did you make that yourself? If I were talking to 5 people, I would say, those are cool vests. Did y'all make those yourselves? So To me, because I'm talking to one person, I would just say themselves, or talking about one person, I would say themselves. To me, that just kind of makes more sense, but you could do it either way. It's not, I've seen both, like I said, so you can do whatever you want. I personally prefer themselves. I think it makes more sense. Another question I get asked a lot, and sometimes it's not even asked as a question, it's just like made as a suggestion or a complaint or something, is why not just make up new gender-neutral pronouns instead of using singular they? And this has actually been done. This has already been done. There are already many gender-neutral pronouns, many gender-neutral pronouns, going back decades, even hundreds of years. And there are people out there who are using these pronouns. I know plenty of people who use these. I don't think I know a lot of people who use these exclusively just because of what I'm about to say, which is that they unfortunately haven't caught on as much in the mainstream. For whatever reason, singular they has caught on far more easily than any of these other pronouns. And I kind of think it's just because of what I talked about in the last video, which is that we already use they, them pronouns for a singular person when we're talking about somebody hypothetical. And so I think it was just a little easier to kind of adapt to that than to have to learn a whole new set of pronouns. And I think it's interesting that people complain about they, them pronouns and say that it would be easier if there were new pronouns. I'm sure that a lot of people do feel that way, but I 100%, 150% guarantee you if one of those other pronouns had been the thing that had caught on in the mainstream, people would be complaining about that, and they would be saying, why did you have to make up new pronouns? Why can't you just use they like we already do? Like, I promise you people would be saying that. So there is no magic answer that pleases everybody, and that's why there is still kind of this pushback and resistance to they, them pronouns, although it is definitely changing. But like I said, there are a lot of gender-neutral pronouns already, and if you are a person who wants to be referred to in a gender-neutral way, you are welcome to use any of these. You're welcome to make up your own pronouns. There are no rules for what pronouns are, like, there is no, like, non-binary, gender-neutral committee who, like, goes through this stuff and, like, votes on it. This is just, like, they, them has caught on because it's the most popular, and it has just, like, really caught on in the mainstream, like, way more than any other gender-neutral pronoun. So, in my opinion, that kind of has made it the kind of default thing that is probably going to be the one that stands the test of time, but you never know, because language is fluid and dynamic, and for all we know, like, in 20 years, people could have already, like, changed to using a different gender-neutral pronoun. Like, maybe people will like that better. I don't know. But to answer the question, there already are those, but it hasn't, that's not what won the Highlander of gender-neutral pronouns.
There can be only one.
And the other question I get quite a bit is something along the lines of, won't it be confusing to use they for a single person if they're part of a group? For example, what if that person is standing with some other people and you point them out and use the word them? How will the person you're talking to know who you're talking about? And I've been trying to figure out how to answer this question. I don't have, like, a really perfect answer to it. In my opinion, this is a far greater problem in people's minds than it actually is in reality. This is not something that I run into very much. At least not any more than happens in any other pronoun. Like, this already happens with other pronouns. For example, you, if you're talking to a group of people and you're looking at one person in particular, you could say you and mean that person, or you could mean the whole group. Or if you're just talking to one person and you say you do such and such, a lot of times people do that and then they have to say, well, I mean the general you, not you specifically, because that could be confusing. But again, that's not a confusing thing about they, them pronouns. That's just a confusing thing about any pronoun that could be used in both plural and singular. And it even can be confusing when you're talking about pronouns that can only be used in the singular. Like, you could imagine 5 guys standing in a group and you point one of them out and say, look at him. How is the person going to know which one you're talking about? Easy. You have to use some other clarification for who you're talking about. Oh, the one with the backpack. Oh, the one with the brown hair. Like, you just clarify. That's just how we do things in language when the words are confusing. So it's the same with singular they. If for some reason you are using that about somebody who is in a group and the person you're talking to is confused, you can just clarify it. That's it. Like, that's really all you need to do. It's pretty much that simple. So that pretty much covers all the questions I get pretty frequently about they, them pronouns and how to use them. I'm sure there will be more questions asked in the comments of this video, and I hope that you do comment and leave your questions, because I would be happy to try to answer those in another future video, how to use they, them pronouns part 3. But I did just want to mention one or two other things. I got a comment from somebody, and I unfortunately can't remember this person's name. I should have written it down. But somebody commented on that video and said that they were practicing how to use they, them pronouns by creating a D&D character and using they, them pronouns for that character. I think it was like a familiar or something. So it wasn't like their main player character, but it was a character in their story. So that they felt like that was a good way to be able to practice it in a low stakes setting, and not only with themselves, but with their family, who I guess they play D&D with. So I thought that was really cool. I thought that was a cool way to do it. And you could do that with other things like a video game, or like, I don't know, any other kind of game where you create a character. You could write a story. I've gotten some comments from writers who are writing non-binary characters and wanted to know how to use they, them pronouns. So I thought that was cool. But yeah, pretty much any kind of like creation that you could make up, you can give a character they, them pronouns and use that as a way to practice them without having an actual person there. So if you mess up, then it's not a big deal. And another thing you might want to try is when you're talking about an animal, you could use they, them pronouns. I know this is like kind of weird for some people. This has actually been a little bit difficult for me, because I, like most people, grew up and was surrounded by people using it to describe an animal. And that's kind of silly, because animals are, like, they're not humans, but they're still like living creatures with personalities and stuff. So when you talk about an animal whose sex you know, you call them him or her or whatever. So I don't know, it kind of actually makes more sense if you called one whose sex you didn't know them, but we don't really do that. So that's something you could practice. Another thing you could try practicing is just when you're out in public, or when you're just talking about somebody, like that you are talking about a specific person, but you don't know their gender, then you can just call them them. And that's another way to practice it. Yeah, I think those are the only like new practice tips I have. But hopefully those will be helpful to somebody. And thank you to the people who commented and gave those tips about characters and so on. One other thing I wanted to note, I guess this could have gone in the frequently asked questions, although I've only gotten it a couple times, is that anybody can use they, them pronouns. You do not have to be non-binary to use they, them pronouns. You can be completely female, completely male, whatever, it does not matter. They, them pronouns are just gender-neutral pronouns. It just means the pronoun is gender neutral. It doesn't mean you have to be gender neutral. So it's just like if you were saying, like, instead of saying the postman, you say postal worker. If you were saying firefighter instead of fireman or firewoman, like, it's just a gender neutral. Gender neutral doesn't mean devoid of gender. It doesn't mean necessarily a combination of genders. It just means it is outside of, like, it's irrespective of gender. It doesn't depend on gender. That's like all gender neutral really means. So I think maybe because of all of the kind of media stuff about non-binary and gender non-conforming people and so on, like the idea of gender neutral has kind of gotten this context around it that can be relevant. Like, that is sometimes what it means. But gender neutral itself just means like not aligned with a specific gender. It doesn't mean the person isn't aligned with a specific gender. It's like buying a unisex t-shirt. Like, it doesn't mean that the person wearing the t-shirt doesn't have a sex. It doesn't mean they have more than one sex. It just means that t-shirt can be worn by anybody of any sex. So that's exactly the same as gender neutral pronouns, such as, but not limited to, they, them. So I think that was all the tips that I have, all of the answers that I have. and everything that I wanted to talk about in this video. But of course, if you have any further questions, if you have anything else you want to comment on, please leave those in the comments section below. And if there are enough questions added on, I will make another video in the future. I hope this video was helpful. If you liked it, you can give it a thumbs up, and you can subscribe to see more of my future content. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss anything. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.